This chapter contains foul language. Looking down on a very beautiful blue planet, you would think such a planet is full of life and blossoming with nature. You would be correct, except this planet hides a very dark and bloody secret. The age of shinobi, an age which many argue started with the powerful sage of the six paths, but you would be wrong. The sage was a very pacifist person who wanted to connect people using chakra, but fate can be cruel sometimes. Due to some mistakes from the sage, manipulation, and strong emotions, his two sons began the cycle of bloodshed that continued for centuries. Their bloodline continued to fight for a long time, pulling other people and clans into a bloody long war that even children weren't safe from. This continued until the formation of hidden villages. At said time, it was relatively peaceful, which many appreciated. But the shinobi's human nature of greed can never be contained. Shinobi world wars broke out one after another in a bloody dance of mayhem and destruction. This is the dark side of the beautiful planet of the elemental nations. Elemental nations, somewhere in the land of fire, 3 years before the start of the Third Shinobi War. Inside a tavern, we find a very depressed 18-year-old Minato Namikaze drinking his sorrows away. One would ask why the usually cheerful and sunny young Jonin would be so sad. Well, his girlfriend for more than 6 years, Kushina Uzumaki, broke up with him. The fiery redhead broke up with him simply because he didn't spend more time with her. Minato clenched his teeth as he thought of the real reason, as he took another cup of sake to his mouth. Tensions on the land of fire borders have increased dramatically over the last couple of months. So the Hokage and his advisors, predicting a new war on the horizon, deployed a lot of manpower to secure the borders. Minato, the young genius Jonin, was one of them. He spent the last couple of months on the border, and when he got a chance to get a small vacation, he took it to spend a couple of days with Kushina before returning to the border again. Minato chucked bitterly with a flushed face and said sarcastically, "A lot of good I got from that. She broke up with me for doing my duty and without giving me time to explain." He then proceeded to gulp down the remaining of his sake. While he continued drinking, he felt a relatively large, yet familiar chakra signature approaching the inn. After a little while, a familiar, beautiful young woman entered the inn. She looked around, then her eyes locked on Minato's back. She looked surprised to find him drinking so heavily, as he rarely drank alcohol, and if he drank any, it was in small amounts. She approached and sat beside him. "Hello, Minato." He looked at her and gave her a sad smile. "Good to see you, Lady Tsunade." This young lady is Tsunade Senju, the first Hokage Hashirama Senju's granddaughter, one of the 3 Sannin and one of the last Senju alive, if not the last. She looked at him with a questioning look and asked, "What got you so worked up and sad to the level of drowning yourself in alcohol?" She then joked, "Don't tell me Kushina broke up with you?" But in her mind, that was impossible, as her somewhat younger sister is smitten with the young man. Minato's face darkened, and he said, "She did." Tsunade's face changed from joking and amused to total shock immediately. She asked in a shocked and urgent tone, "What the hell happened? You are on that girl's mind almost all the time. It better not be your fault." Minato looked at her with a defeated look and raised his hands in surrender. "I didn't even do anything wrong. See, what happened was..." He then explained the whole thing to her. After hearing the explanation, Tsunade sighed, "That girl really screwed up this time. You being on the border isn't your fault. You were just performing your duty." She then tried to comfort him by saying, "Don't worry, she will come around, and you will be together again." He gave a hollow laugh and said, "That may have to wait for 6 months, as I'm going back to the border the day after tomorrow." Tsunade sighed as she poured herself and him some sake and said, "Well, that would suck, as it is her fault, and she will have to reflect on that. Well, good luck in your relationship and your deployment." Minato gave her a grateful smile and said, "Thank you. That is very kind of you, Lady Tsunade." They continued to drink in silence. Minato then asked, "How are you doing these days, Lady Tsunade?" she sighed and said, still traveling around and trying to forget painful memories. Tsunade lost both her brother, Nawaki, and her lover, Dan, in the Second Shinobi War and was depressed and sad ever since. Minato, knowing that, said, sometimes when you hear the other's misfortunes, your own becomes somehow lighter. Tsunade chuckled quietly and said, look at you becoming a philosopher. Minato gave a small smile and said, well, I try. They continued to drink in silence, enjoying each other's company and getting more intoxicated. Suddenly, a flushed Tsunade grabbed Minato's hand and dragged him to her room. What happened that night, even though they were drunk, stayed in their memory for as long as they lived. Time skip. Next day before noon. Minato started to wake up. He tried to sit up as he was slightly disoriented. He looked around, and his eyes fell on a naked female back beside him. Before he could even think, a sharp headache assaulted him. As it slowly went away, the memories from the previous night started to play in his mind. He slowly pulled the blanket to cover his entire body as his face flushed so hard it would put Kushina's red hair to shame. Tsunade, beside him, started to wake up with a killer headache. She looked around, and then her eyes fell on Minato's glowing red face. Her face went from confused to furious as she yelled, Minato, you bastard, what the fuck did you do? Minato's flushed face looked at her. He then said in a slightly heated tone, what did I do? The right question is, what did you do? You dragged me here last night, and then proceeded to have your way with me, while holding me so tightly like a snake coiling around its prey. He then had a look like he was experiencing PTSD and said, I have never felt so violated. Tsunade became embarrassed by what he was saying. Her returning memories from last night didn't help. She sighed and muttered, I really should control my drinking. She then silently covered herself with her blanket and went to take a shower and change into her clothes. After she came out dressed, Minato went to the shower and did the same thing. When he came out, Tsunade was waiting for him on the couch. The look she was giving him was telling him they needed to talk. As he approached her, he asked, so what now? Tsunade sighed and said in an even tone, well, I am angry, but this was mostly my fault, so let's never speak of this again. Minato nodded slightly, but he had to ask, that is okay with me, but what if someone found out about this, especially Kushina? Tsunade slightly flinched. She then thought about it a little, then said, as I said, we keep quiet about this. If Kushina found out, well, she broke up with you, so you were a single man. Anyway, I will talk to her if she finds out. Minato relaxed a bit and said, thank you, Lady Tsunade. She then said, you could drop the lady part. It feels weird now. He nodded. They then proceeded to have breakfast, and then both of them split their own way. Time skip, 3 months later. About 1 month after the incident with Minato, Tsunade got the biggest news of her life. She got pregnant. When her monthly cycle was later than usual, she was concerned. As the best medical ninja in the elemental nations, she scanned herself to find out about her pregnancy. After the shock went away, she became angry, joyful, and worried. Angry at Minato for getting her pregnant and at herself for allowing that. Joyful for having the opportunity to have a family again. She was also worried about the future of her baby. After 2 months of discovering her pregnancy, she made up her mind to tell Minato. So she summoned Katsuyu to ask her to tell Minato to meet her in an inn in a town near the land of Fire Border. Time skip. Couple of days later inside an inn. Tsunade was waiting for Minato to arrive. She was drinking some fruit juice when she saw him arrive. She pointed for him to sit down. As he was sitting down, he couldn't help but ask, what is it, Tsunade? I thought you wouldn't want to see me for another couple of years or so. Tsunade chuckled and said, while I would like that, I have something important to say. Minato nodded and waited for her to talk. She proceeded to give him a mocking smile and said, congratulations, you bastard, you knocked me up. Minato blinked a few times. He was so shocked that all that came out of his mouth was a quiet what. Tsunade gave him a flat look then said, you got me pregnant. Hearing confirmation, Minato just fainted. Tsunade blinked, then chuckled and waited for him to wake up. After some time, Minato woke up. He blinked a couple of times, looked at Tsunade, embarrassed, and started to think about what he was told. He then asked her, "What are you going to do?" She flatly told him, "I'm going to keep it." She was surprised when he gave her a large, sunny smile, and she heard him say, "That is great." Tsunade, amused and somewhat thoughtful, asked, "Well, that is a surprise. I thought you would want me to abort it for a second." Minato gave her a serious yet hopeful look and said, "I would have never asked you to do that. As an orphan, for me to be a father is a blessing. I just didn't think that I would become a father so early and by accident." Tsunade gave him a heated look and said, "Never call my baby an accident. To you it may be, but to me it is a gift." She proceeded to look at her belly and stroke it in a motherly, loving fashion, saying, "My precious little gift." Minato smiled and asked, "How far along are you?" She replied by saying, 3 months. Minato then reached into his pouch and handed Tsunade a Flying Thunder God kunai and said, "I recently mastered the Flying Thunder God jutsu. You can call me anytime you want, and I will be there." Tsunade to the kunai, still surprised that he mastered her granduncle's jutsu. Minato then asked her, distressed, "What do I tell Kushina if we come back together?" Tsunade sighed and said, "When that day comes, I will talk to her." After chatting for a little bit more, they went their separate ways. Time skip, 7 months later, on the 7th of October, about 2 years before the Third Shinobi War. These 7 months were joyful and exhausting for Tsunade. Her mood swings and cravings were exhausting, but the joy of carrying her own child made the exhaustion go away. As for Minato, he came regularly to check on Tsunade and help her with anything she wanted, even though he and Kushina had made up 3 months before. Her due date arrived, and the air was filled with anticipation, joy, and worry. Minato was there from early in the morning to help Tsunade. She wanted the birth of her child to be in complete secrecy, so she chose an isolated cave and prepared it for the delivery. Tsunade made a couple of shadow clones to help her in the delivery. It is a good thing that the shadow clone can be its own entity while connected to the original, or Minato would have to do the delivery. When the contractions began, there were 2 screams from the cave. One is currently delivering a baby, and the other is having to endure his hand being crushed and the numerous death threats coming from the first. You already know which one is which. After a while, the sound of a baby crying was heard. Looking, we see a clone of Tsunade handing the original Tsunade a blue bundle carrying her cleaned baby. Minato was in the corner crying happy and pained tears as another clone of Tsunade was healing his hand. As the clone handed the baby to the original Tsunade while saying, "Congratulations, you now have a beautiful, cute baby boy," and then vanished in a puff of smoke. Tsunade carved her baby boy's features into her mind while looking at him with joyful tears. Minato, now with a healed hand, approached to get a better look at his son. He was happy and intrigued by the baby. The baby boy who was sleeping had a beautiful, cute face that, for a second, you would think he was a girl. Most of his face was inherited from his beautiful mother. What intrigued the new parents was the color of his hair. Although his parents were different shades of blonde, the baby's hair is a vibrant shade of blood red with black tips and highlights. Minato asked, still fascinated by the baby, "What do you want to name him, Tsunade?" Tsunade thought for a moment before saying, "You can name him, as it will be only fair, as he will always stay with me." Minato nodded and then said, "How about Naruto?" Tsunade looked at him, amused, as in the character in Jiraiya's only one non-perverted book. Minato chuckled and said, "Yeah, the name also means maelstrom." Tsunade nodded and said, "A good name, Naruto Senju." Minato asked, "What do you think of his hair?" Tsunade replied, "Well, he has the Uzumaki red hair from his great-grandmother, and the black highlights, I think, came from a Senju as it was quite common. All in all, it is a beautiful mix." While the two were chatting, baby Naruto started to open his eyes and looked at his parents while giving them a cute, toothless smile and a giggle, which made his mother squeal at how adorable her baby boy is. Minato chuckled and said happily, "At least he got my eye color though a different shade. Tsunade nodded and said, "While your eyes are a lighter shade of blue, Naruto's are like a pair of sapphires, which looks beautiful on him." She then started to breastfeed him while muttering darkly, "I will have to beat up all the harlots that would try to approach him in the future." Minato chuckled nervously. Looks like Tsunade is in full mama bear mood. After a while, Minato asked, "Where will you go now, Tsunade?" She answered while looking at her baby feeding with a look filled with so much motherly love it will surprise anyone. "I will go to the fire capital and raise him there for a while." Minato nodded and said, "That sounds perfect, and I will come and visit as frequent as possible." As soon as Tsunade had rested from childbirth, she took her baby Naruto and went to the capital, and Minato went back to the border. This is the beginning of the story of Naruto Senju, the son of Minato Namikaze and Tsunade Senju. Lord_Shura time skip. 1 year later. The elemental nations are experiencing a period of unrest that is affecting everyone, especially the smaller nations. Tensions on all of the Great Five Nations borders had led to unease in all the population as it became known that the next shinobi war was imminent, but it was all a matter of when. Although the Second Shinobi War ended just a decade earlier, the still recovering great nations have an overflowing sense of greed, bloodlust, and thirst for revenge, especially against the last war's sole victor, Konoha. The situation is like a large, overflowing gunpowder barrel that only needs the tiniest of sparks to blow up in the face of everyone and everything. Meanwhile, in the fire capital, in a relatively large traditional house on the edge of the capital, we see a 1-year-old Naruto running around giggling while only wearing his diaper. We can also see a smiling Tsunade trying to catch him while carrying his clothes. She was able to catch him, making him giggle harder. "Caught you, you little rascal," said Tsunade, smiling while enjoying his giggles. "Hee, mama," squealed Naruto in a cute voice. This word became Tsunade's favorite ever since Naruto first said it. The last year was the happiest and most fulfilling year in Tsunade's life, even though it was a little exhausting. Ever since her little baby boy entered her life, her nightmare and bad memories went away, getting replaced by precious memories of her cute bundle of joy. Every day was a new pleasant memory. Naruto wasn't a baby that needed 24/7 attention. He only cried when he was hungry or needed a diaper change, or missed his mom. That was for the first 5 months. Then he learned how to crawl, and boy, was he fast. This new way of limited movement allowed the very curious baby to follow his mother around or explore his surroundings. At about the end of his 8th month, he started to walk and said his first words, "Mama," while walking slowly to his awaiting mother's arms. This day was one, if not the most, treasured memories of Tsunade. After that, the little boy gradually increased the number of words he could say and was quick on his feet before he was even 1 year old. As for Minato, at first he came around every week, but later on he came once every month due to the increased activity on the border. But he did everything to be in Naruto's life. He played with him, brought him gifts and toys, and even read him bedtime stories, which was rewarded by cute giggles, smiles, and an adorable dada each time baby Naruto saw him. These moments, the first time orphan father treasured deep in his heart. Returning to the current scene, we find Tsunade dressing the giggling Naruto when Minato flashed inside the living room. Upon seeing his father, he squealed happily, and when his mother finished dressing him, he stood up and ran to his father while yelling, "Papa." Minato, while smiling, caught his little boy and lifted him up into his arms, and started to play and tickle him a bit while saying, "Hey, little man, how are you?" Naruto replied, giggling good. Tsunade had a small smile on her face, seeing the interaction between the father and son duo. After playing with his son a bit, Minato put Naruto on his feet and then said to Tsunade with a serious tone, with a hint of sadness in it, "I won't be coming here again for at least 6 months. The situation on the border is becoming worse every day." Tsunade's face darkened as she grimly said, "That bad, huh?" Minato nodded with a serious face and said, "Yeah, it is. War is imminent. It's a matter of when." The tense and grim atmosphere was broken by a sad Naruto pulling on his father's pants and saying, "Come back." Minato, while surprised, gave his son a warm smile and bent down to give him a head pat, then said, "Of course I will be back. Nothing will ever stop me from coming to see you, Naruto." That rewarded him with a big sunny smile from his little boy, who then proceeded to run cheerfully to the garden to play. Tsunade, while appreciating the wholesome father-son moment, remembered something important that she wanted to discuss with Minato. She then proceeded to get his attention by saying, "Minato, there is something important I need to talk to you about." Minato pulled his attention from the playing boy to give her a look that asked her to elaborate. Tsunade then proceeded to say, "I am thinking about telling Sensei about Naruto." That had Minato collect his thoughts before giving an answer. Tsunade Sensei is the well-renowned and current Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. That isn't the problem for Minato. Telling the third Hokage could be a good thing, as he would protect the son of his student. What worries Minato is the third Hokage's teammates and advisors, who are known for controversial decisions, especially the leader of Root, the war hawk Danzo Shimura. After collecting his thoughts, he said, "I have no problem, but you need to tell him before the war finally breaks out, and to come here alone if you want him to come. When you tell him to make sure he keeps it to himself, can't have his advisors knowing, especially Danzo." That made Tsunade's face darken and in a heated voice replied, "I will definitely do that. That old war hawk better keep his filthy hands off my baby boy, or he won't be seeing the sunlight ever again." "Well, Tsunade's mama bear is activated," joked Minato to himself. After their discussion, Minato proceeded to spend the rest of the day with his son, as he won't be seeing him again for the next 6 months. Time skip 3 months later. In the Hokage's office. Inside the office where you usually find the strongest shinobi in the village, we find a third Hokage in a miserable state, buried in his worst enemy, paperwork. "I really need to find a successor. I can't take this anymore," muttered Hiruzen to himself. While he was still cursing out the paperwork, he was taken out of his self-pity by a puff of smoke that revealed his student Tsunade's summoned animal, Katsu, or just a small version of her. Surprised by her appearance, Hiruzen asked, "Hello, Lady Katsu, long time no see. How is Tsunade? Is everything all right?" Hiruzen was worried, as it had been quite some time since Tsunade contacted him, and he feared something had happened. Katsu cooled his nerves by saying, "Hello, Hiruzen-sama. It has been quite some time. Tsunade-sama is fine. She just wanted me to deliver you a message." She then handed him the scroll she had and left in a puff of smoke. Hiruzen was interested in what his student might send him, so he opened the scroll and started reading. It read, "Hello, Sarutobi-sensei. I hope you're doing fine and in good health. I am fine and well. I am writing to you to ask you to meet me secretly at the Senja home in the Fire Capital. I need to tell you something very important, and it can't be said in the village. This is very crucial for my future. P.S. I am serious about you coming alone. Anyone else coming with you will return to Konoha in a body bag. Signed, Tsunade Senju." After reading the letter, Hiruzen's sweat dropped at the end of the letter. This is definitely Tsunade, he thought, chuckling to himself. But quickly he became serious and very curious. What was so important that he needed to go see Tsunade in the Fire Capital in such secrecy? It must be highly confidential for her not to be able to come to the village. Knowing that Tsunade won't joke about something like this, he checked his schedule. Finding that there is nothing important for the rest of the day and the following day, he made a shadow clone to take his place and made his way to the Fire Capital in secret. As he could make the journey there and back in almost a day, he also wanted to get away from the paperwork. Little did he know he was in for a surprise in the capital. Even though Hiruzen's nickname is the Professor, he can't figure out that the shadow clones are his chance to defeat paperwork. Less than half a day later, early in the morning, we find Hiruzen in front of the Senja home in the Fire Capital. Shortly after he knocked, he was greeted by a surprised Tsunade opening the door. She then said to him in a surprised tone, "Sensei, welcome, come inside. I didn't think you would come so quickly. I thought I would have to wait a couple of days." Hiruzen chuckled and replied, "You said it was urgent, And I also needed to get away from the office. The paperwork is going to kill me. He finished with a haunted look. Tsunade laughed lightly and joked, "Well, you look older than the last time I saw you." Hiruzen was quite surprised by Tsunade's cheerful mood. The last time he saw her, she looked like she had given up on life. It warmed his aging heart that his precious student is doing well for herself. He then asked her, intrigued, "So Tsunade, what's so important that I had to come here for?" Tsunade looked a little nervous and said, "You may need to sit down first." Now Hiruzen is worried. He asked, "Now you're making me worry. What is going on?" Tsunade served him tea as he sat down and chuckled nervously while saying, "It isn't something bad. I think what you're about to hear and see may surprise you too much." She then turned to inside the house and called in a soft yet loud enough to be heard, "Naruto, come here." This puzzled Hiruzen. Who was this Naruto, and why was Tsunade calling him softly? He was even more confused when he heard footsteps coming from inside the house that sounded like a child's footsteps. The surprise and confusion became apparent on his face when what looked like a 2-year-old red-headed child came into the room. "Yes, Mommy." Naruto was curious about why he was called. His eyes then fell on the surprised Hiruzen, who was a stranger to him, and he became a little cautious. He stood near his mother with his eyes still on Hiruzen and asked his mother, "Mama, who is this?" Tsunade replied with a soft tone, "This is my sensei." That made a flicker of recognition appear in Naruto's eyes. His mom told him a story about herself and most of the people she knows. The confused Hiruzen, who was sitting with his tea in his hands, had his eyes on the pair while trying to figure out what was happening. He asked Tsunade, "Tsunade, can I have some clarity, please? What is so important and secretive right now? What I'm seeing seems like an Uzumaki kid you either found or adopted." He then sipped his tea to calm his nerves and continue thinking. Tsunade sighed and said, "Sarutobi-sensei, this is my son, my blood-related son." There was a moment of silence that was broken by the sound of a teacup smashing on the ground. Hiruzen was as if someone threw a baijidama on him. His teacup slipped from his hand as he tried to process what he just heard. To him, this was one, if not the most important, piece of major news he had ever heard. His student, one of the last Senju, if not the last, and their princess had a male heir. This was a surprising and wonderful piece of news, which was also worrying. As he was arranging his thoughts, they were broken when he heard Tsunade cleaning the place of the broken teacup. He then asked in an astonished tone, "When? Where? With whom? Who also knows?" Tsunade sighed as she finished cleaning and said, "I will tell you all the details, but first things first." She looked at her son with a soft smile and said, "Naruto, honey, come and introduce yourself." Hiruzen looks at the approaching child with more attention this time. He has a lot of features from his mother's beautiful face, though still very immature, with the most beautiful set of blue sapphire eyes, with a head full of vibrant red blood hair with black tips and highlights. All in all, this is one beautiful and cute kid who would be extremely handsome in the future. Naruto, now knowing who the stranger is, approached him enthusiastically with a beautiful sunny smile. Reaching in front of Hiruzen, he said, "Hey, Grandpa Su." The nickname made Tsunade have a spit take while Hiruzen looked nostalgic. "My name is Naruto Senju, and I am 1 year and 3 months old," while holding out his hands and showing 1 and 3 on each hand, looking proud of himself. Hiruzen's face softened considerably from his surprise and gave the cute child a warm smile. That nickname Su brought him many fond memories, as this is what his sensei, the second Hokage Tobirama Senju, and his older brother Hashirama used to call him. He chuckled and smiled warmly at Naruto and said, "Nice to meet you, young man. I am Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage and your mother's sensei. But you can call me Grandpa Saru." Naruto smiled at him and said, "Nice to meet you too, Grandpa Su." Hiruzen smiled while nodding, then asked, "Naruto, can you go play so I can talk to your mother?" Naruto nodded slowly after looking at his mother, who nodded to him. He then went to the garden to play. Hiruzen turned to Tsunade and said, Firstly, congratulations, Tsunade, but I really need you to answer my previous questions. Tsunade sighed and sat down, then said, well, I got pregnant here in the land of fire less than 2 years ago. After I gave birth, I came and stayed here in the fire capital. And the only ones who know are me, his father, and now you. Hiruzen, intrigued and wanting to know, asked, who is his father? Tsunade made up her mind to tell him, and said, Minato Namikaze. Hiruzen blinked and asked, Minato, as in Jiraiya's student? He got a nod as an answer. Hiruzen couldn't help but ask, how did this happen? Tsunade sighed and told him everything from the beginning. After hearing everything, Hiruzen understood and said, well, with all things considered, this is a blessing. Tsunade looked at him with a bright smile. Of course, he is my precious son, the most important person in my life. Hiruzen smiled at the happy mother, then said seriously, have you considered training him? Tsunade nodded sadly. Although I wanted him to live in peace, that is nothing but a fantasy. His being my son and a male senju heir already made him a highly valued target. I will open his chakra when he turns 4 and teach him anything afterwards. Right now, I am making him enjoy his childhood while teaching him simple things like reading, writing, and simple math. Hiruzen nodded and said, that is a solid plan. In the meantime, don't tell anyone about him. The fewer people who know, the better. When you start training him, you can ask me for anything for his training. When you are ready, and he is ready, you can come to the village for his genin evaluation exam. Tsunade said, that will do, sensei. After further discussions, they sat for breakfast. After that, Hiruzen said goodbye to the mother and son and returned to Konoha. Time skip, 2 years and 10 months later. Well, the inevitable happened, and the Third Shinobi War has been at full swing for a little more than 2 years. The war happened due to the gradual decrease in the great nation's power due to repeated clashes on its border, which eventually turned into a full-blown war. The main theme of the war was mostly between Konoha, trying to defend the borders of the Land of Fire, and the other 4 great nations, trying to expand into each other's territory, especially wanting to expand to the resource-rich Land of Fire. Even though Konoha has a high quantity and quality of shinobi, defending the Land of Fire from all sides is still exhausting for resources and manpower. Meanwhile, in the Senja home in the Fire Capital, in the back garden overlooking the large forest in the back of the house, we find Tsunade training her 4-year-old son in the use of chakra. It has been 2 years and 10 months since she told her sensei about Naruto, and she has been teaching him ever since. Throughout the years, the pride Tsunade was feeling about her son increased continuously. Before even unlocking his chakra, Naruto was and still is a very smart, curious, and bright boy. He liked to learn about new things and explore. He always likes to explore the forest outside his home or watch whatever his mother does. Then at night, he likes to sit down and read the many books inside the huge library in the house. As Tsunade watches her son train, she can't stop thinking about how her baby boy is growing up. To her, her son is growing up and maturing way too fast. He takes his training and studying seriously, unlike other children his age. She sometimes feels sad and guilty about not being able to make him meet children his age. That wasn't a problem for Naruto, though, as he had a very cautious nature. How'd he get this nature? That was what his mother puzzled about. One time, when they went out to get their daily needs, Tsunade is under transformation jutsu, so no one can identify her. A disguised Tsunade watched as her little boy was always vigilant and aware of his surroundings. When they returned home, she asked him about that. He told her, I read in a book that in this world, especially in war, every unknown person is potentially an enemy until she proves otherwise. This response is a little heartbreaking to Tsunade. To her, being vigilant is always a good thing, but for her baby, a 4-year-old boy, to grow up and mature so fast that he started to look out for his and her safety is a little heartbreaking to her. Tsunade thought back about a month ago on Naruto's 4th birthday when she opened his chakra pathways. She took him to the garden outside the house after celebrating his birthday with his father. After Minato left, she taught him the process of unlocking chakra and guided him through it. When he unlocked it, it surprised Tsunade. She wasn't surprised by the quantity of his chakra, even though it was a little higher than what she expected. He is a Senju after all. What surprised her was the quality of his chakra. Naruto's chakra felt so dense, pure, and heavy that the color of his chakra was more of a purple than the usual blue. She was afraid that he would have difficulty trying to control his chakra due to its quantity and density, but to her delight, he inherited her high chakra control. Tsunade was taken out of her thoughts when she heard some animals enter the garden and approach her son. Usually, a mother would freak out and bring her son inside, but to Tsunade, this was a usual thing. At first, it astonished Tsunade that her then 2-year-old son would go to the forest near the garden and play with the different wildlife there. They were mostly not dangerous animals like birds and squirrels. But after he unlocked his chakra, Tsunade's astonishment increased as other wildlife started to appear like deer, foxes with their kits, snakes, monkeys, a mama bear and her cubs, and a silverback gorilla and her child. Tsunade always thought her son had a special bond with animals, but this variety of animals astonished her. The older animals always treat him as their child, while Naruto plays with their offspring. Tsunade always has a good laugh when Naruto wrestles the baby silverback or the bear cubs. It always gave Naruto encouragement to train his body more, so he wouldn't lose to them. Naruto's bond with these animals also made him want to be a doctor like his mother. This came from whenever he went outside, he sometimes came back with an injured animal. Watching his mother heal them always piqued his interest in being like his mom. As for Minato, he comes once every 6 months, or if there's a special occasion, like him having a vacation or Naruto's birthday. When he is around, he brings gifts and books to Naruto and spends almost all of his free time with him. For Naruto's training, he expressed to his mother that he wants to be an all-around shinobi. So with the help of his mother, he made a schedule to learn everything he was currently interested in. Naruto is highly interested in ninjutsu, jinjutsu, taijutsu, medical jutsu, kenjutsu, and fuinjutsu. For now, Tsunade taught him a lot of academic skills, medicine, laws, politics, and mathematics. On the physical side, she made him a training regimen that will make him grow stronger without having bad effects. She also taught him simple Senju-style taijutsu katas and simple jutsu for now, like replacement, transformation, and clone jutsu. She also taught him a shadow clone, as he has the chakra capacity for a few of them. She has also given him a chakra paper to identify his chakra natures. The reaction of the paper made Tsunade feel surprised and happy as the paper showed that her son had a very strong affinity to all chakra natures. But learning elemental jutsu will wait for 2 years. As for jinjutsu, kenjutsu, and fuinjutsu, Naruto would read and practice from the notes that his great-grandmother and great-granduncle wrote, as his mother didn't have much information about them. Time skip, about 7 months later, on Tsunade's birthday, August 2nd. Today was Tsunade's birthday, and she was celebrating it with her son, who will become 5 years old in about 2 months. Minato had sent her an expensive sake bottle as a present a couple of days earlier, as he was busy and did not want to arouse suspicion. It was a thoughtful gift. Even though Tsunade quit her heavy drinking after getting pregnant with Naruto, she still enjoys a little bit from time to time without ever getting intoxicated or drunk. After a small celebration with some food, cake, and fruit drinks, Naruto said to his mom, "Hey mom, I have a present for you. I will go get it." Tsunade smiled at her child and said, "It is very kind of you, honey. You shouldn't have." Naruto smiled brightly at his mother and said, "Wasn't that difficult, Mom? I just wanted to give you your first present from me on your birthday." He then took off running to get his mom's present. Tsunade continued to drink her juice while waiting for her son to come back. After some time, Naruto came back with a relatively large tree pot. Inside was the most beautiful and vibrant small cherry blossom tree Tsunade had ever seen. Naruto put the pot in front of his mom and said happily with a bright smile, "Happy birthday, Mommy." Although Tsunade loved the gift, she was confused about how her son could bring a blooming cherry blossom tree. Cherry blossom blooms from March through to the end of April. So how could he get a vibrant pink, blooming cherry blossom tree in August? Tsunade then said, "That's a beautiful gift. Honey, I love it." "Where did you get it?" she asked, quite intrigued. Naruto said, "I didn't buy it. I planted it myself." He looked proud of himself. Now Tsunade is more confused. She asked, "When did you plant it? And how did you get a bloom?" Naruto said simply, "I planted it yesterday. I planted the seed and fed it my chakra, like from what I read about great-grandfather Hashirama." Tsunade couldn't believe her ears. She looked at the small tree in front of her in astonishment and could only say, while looking at Naruto, "Show me." Naruto nodded and said, "Okay, but come with me to the garden. There's another surprise. I can show you how I grew the tree there, as I'm only putting the final touch." Tsunade followed Naruto to a hidden section of the garden where she was amazed to find it full of fruit trees like mangoes, apples, oranges, and many more. Many of them weren't even in season. While Tsunade looks at the trees in astonishment, Naruto went to the nearby shed and came back with one seed and showed it to his mom. It was a peach seed. Naruto looked happy at his mom and said, "This is the last tree I want to plant." Under his mother's astonished gaze, he went to a clear piece of land between the fruit tree and planted the seed. Then he started to feed it with his chakra. Right in front of Tsunade, a peach sapling grew so fast into a fully grown tree and even held fully ripe peaches. Tsunade walks slowly to the peach tree while deep in thought. She is now sure that her son inherited her grandfather's bloodline, the wood release. For many, this is the most powerful bloodline that even enabled her grandfather to keep the 5 great nations in peace. Tsunade reached and took a peach from the tree and took a bite. She was momentarily stumped on how delicious it is. For her, this is the best peach she has ever tasted. She turned around and asked her son, "Why did you make this garden, Naruto?" Naruto smiled at her and said, "You and I enjoy eating fruits, but most of them are seasonal, but now we can eat what we want all year long." Tsunade smiled at her son and bent down to be at his height and planted a kiss on his forehead and said, "That is very sweet of you, baby, but I need you to promise me something." Naruto looked at her curiously and asked, "Promise you what, Mom?" Tsunade looked at him seriously and said, "Promise me not to tell anyone about your ability. People will seek to hurt you if they find out." Naruto nodded and said, "Okay, Mom, I promise. But what about Dad?" Tsunade then said, "Don't worry about it. I will tell him myself." Naruto nodded. Following that day, Naruto returned to training and learning with Tsunade, guiding him along the way. Time skip, about a week after Naruto's 5th birthday. Early in the morning, we find Tsunade sitting in front of her garden, sipping tea while watching her son train. He is swinging his wooden sword she got him for his 5th birthday. His father also came by to spend the day with him and brought him some gifts as well. Sadly, his father had to leave on the same day as the war was still in full swing. As Tsunade was sipping her tea, she saw 2 of the monkeys that usually play with her son, chasing each other and accidentally bumping into Naruto, interrupting his training. The whole garden came to a stop, and sudden quietness became deafening. Tsunade chucked quietly to herself, thinking about what was coming to the monkeys. Her son Naruto is usually cold, calm, and calculating most of the time, and with strangers, this part of his personality reminds her of her granduncle Tobirama. But unlike Tobirama, Naruto has a happy, joking, sometimes goofy side which he reserves for people he loves or trusts, which as of right now is only her and his dad. Naruto hasn't seen Hiruzen again since he was 1 year and 3 months old due to Hiruzen being the Hokage of Konoha during the middle of a war. This part of his personality, she thinks he inherited it from his great-grandfather, although not as comical. She sighed every time she remembered how comically goofy her grandfather was. Lastly, Naruto rarely gets angry, But when he gets angry, his surroundings become chilly and cold, as if everything is afraid of what anger he might unleash. He even has the scary calm smile like her grandmother when she becomes pissed off about something Hashirama did. Tsunade shivered, remembering the first time her son wore that terrifying smile was when one of the monkeys dropped some fruit pulp on a book he was reading. The poor monkey needed to be treated by her and rest for a week. Her son inherited her monstrous strength, all right. Tsunade's focus returned to the two now shivering monkeys as they took off running, with her son running after them with his wooden sword in hand. Her boy doesn't like being interrupted while reading, training, or studying. Only she can interrupt him. Any other one will face his anger. While Tsunade was watching Naruto chase the monkeys, she suddenly saw two golden chains come out of his back, and in the blink of an eye, and captured the two monkeys and slowly brought them to Naruto, who proceeded to give each of them a hit with his fist on their heads. This scene surprised Tsunade, but not as much as him having the wood release, but she was pleased that her son had another bloodline ability to protect himself in the future. Returning her attention to the current, she wasn't feeling like treating the monkeys again. She was about to call her son to let them go when she noticed that the monkeys were shivering in fright more than before. Thinking that Naruto was giving them the calm smile of death, as she was facing his back, she called to him, "Naruto, honey, you can let go now. They learned their lesson, and I need to talk to you about your chains. Also, I don't want to heal them again." Naruto sighed helplessly, then turned around and looked at his mother and said, "Okay, Mom, I will just hit their head again for reassurance." As Naruto turned back to the lucky but frightened monkeys, he heard a cup fall and smash on the ground, prompting him to look at his mother again, only to find her looking at him, extremely pale with wide, shocked eyes. This greatly worried him, making him let the monkeys go and approach his mother quickly while asking her worriedly, "Mom, are you okay?" Tsunade felt as if the world came crashing down on her as her teacup fell from her hand. When her son turned to look at her, his usual beautiful sapphire blue eyes was absent, replaced by a familiar, yet to her extremely out of place, two sinister, slightly glowing red eyes with a single tomo in each one. Tsunade felt her core shake as she saw her son approach her with his still red eyes. But now they lost their sinister vibe and were looking at her with a concerned and worried expression, which looked bizarre on these eyes. The Sharingan, the bloodline of the Uchiha clan, which was the longtime enemy of her Senju clan before the formation of Konoha. How can her son have those eyes? She was taken out of her shock when she heard the worried question from her son, who was now in front of her. She looked at him and seeing those red eyes, that usually looked very sinister on Uchiha clansmen, looking at her with such love, concern and worry made her calm down and feel much better. She took her son into her arms and cupped his face looking at him and gave him a reassuring smile before saying, "I am fine, baby. I am just surprised by your eyes, that is all." Naruto tilted his head cutely in her hand before saying, "What is wrong with them?" Tsunade resisted the urge to just hug her cute child before saying, "Before that, honey, do your eyes feel any different?" Naruto blinked a couple of times while looking around and said, "Well, now that you mention it, everything looks clearer and also moves more slowly. I can also see what I think is chakra in the air and in you." Tsunade then pulled a mirror from beside her that she used to style her hair and showed Naruto his reflection, which surprised him. She then proceeded to tell him what those were and help him to turn them off by telling him to stop feeding them chakra. After Naruto's eyes returned to their usual sapphire blue, he asked his mom, "How can I have these eyes, Mom?" Tsunade replied to him by saying, "We will have to ask your father, as you surely inherited them from his side of the family, as I for sure know that it didn't come from mine. I will contact him to meet us as soon as possible." Naruto nodded but then asked, "What about those chains from earlier, Mom?" Tsunade almost slapped her forehead. She had almost forgotten about them due to the shock from earlier. She then proceeded to say, "Well, baby, they are called chakra chains, which are one of the bloodline characteristics of the Uzumaki clan, which is the clan where your great-grandmother comes from. I will give you the notes she wrote about them, as I don't have them myself and have no idea how to use them." You can read them while I contact your father. Ugh, honey. Naruto nodded, eager to learn something new in the frontline camp. Evening. Inside a small private tent in the camp, we find a tired Minato writing a report before getting some sleep. Getting some sleep is always a luxury for shinobi on the front lines, as they always face the danger of sudden attacks. As he was finalizing the report, a sudden puff of smoke interrupted him, revealing Katsu. Surprised by her appearance, he asked, "Hello, Katsu-sama. What brings you here?" She replied, "Hello, Minato. I am here to tell you that Tsunade-sama wants you to meet her urgently." That made Minato ask, "Is everything all right? Is Naruto and Tsunade okay?" Katsuyu replied, "Yeah, they are fine. Tsunade-sama just needs to discuss something important with you." After Katsuyu delivered the message, she disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving Minato thinking about what Tsunade needed to discuss with him. He sighed as he finished his report while muttering to himself, "Looks like I am getting no sleep tonight." He then made a shadow clone to take his place and proceeded to leave in a yellow flash. In the Senju home in the Fire Capital. Inside, we find Naruto ready scrolls about Fuinjutsu and chakra chains, which were written by his great-grandmother while his mother is watching him study with a small smile on her face. Both were interrupted by a yellow flash in the living room, marking Minato's arrival. Seeing his father's arrival, Naruto let go of the scrolls and went to greet his father. "Hey, Dad." Minato smiled at his son and gave him a head pat while saying, "Hey, little man, are you being good?" Naruto nodded at him with a smile. Minato looked at Tsunade, who was giving him a serious look, prompting him to be serious too. She then proceeded to say, "We need to discuss something important about Naruto." Minato looked at her, then at Naruto, and then asked her, "Should Naruto stay here and listen?" Tsunade then said, "Of course, this discussion is about him. He is a big boy who can keep a secret." Naruto's face brightened with a sunny smile, and he enthusiastically yelled, "Yeah." This brought a smile to both parents' faces, but the atmosphere turned serious when Tsunade asked Minato, "Minato, do you know your family lineage?" The question surprised Minato, who proceeded to ask, "Why do you ask?" Tsunade replied, "We need to know, as it is very important." Minato thought for a bit before saying, "Well, I was raised as an orphan, so I didn't know who my family is. But recently, after I got promoted to a Jonin, the Hokage gave me a big scroll related to my family. He was given this scroll for safekeeping after my parents had died. Turns out the Namikaze was a clan that was almost wiped out by the end of the First Shinobi War, leaving me as the sole known surviving Namikaze. That was a brief introduction to my history. I didn't dig more into my history as I was busy on the border, and I kind of forgot." Tsunade then said, "Well, you will need to look deeper into it, as there is a big mystery about our son's heritage from your family side." This confused Minato, who then said, "Can you tell me what happened exactly?" Tsunade sighed, then said, "Few months ago on my birthday, I discovered that Naruto inherited my grandfather's bloodline limit, the wood style." This greatly surprised Minato, as this was the first time hearing about this. But that not all. Today, I also discovered that he has two more bloodline limits. One of them is chakra chains like my grandma, and Kushina. While the other surprised me the most is I don't know where it originated from, but I am 100% sure it is from your family side. Minato, now feeling anxious and intrigued, asked, "So what is Naruto's third bloodline that makes you this freaked out?" Tsunade let out a heavy sigh and said, "You need to see it to believe it." She then turned to Naruto, who was sitting quietly beside them, and said, "Naruto, honey, show your father." Minato, now fully giving his son his attention, watched as his son closed his eyes, then opened them again, almost stopping the poor father's heart from their appearance. Gone his son's sapphire blue eyes, now replaced by two scarlet blood red, which were glowing slightly with one tomo in each eye. He knows these eyes very well. They are a bloodline limit, the eyes of the infamous Uchiha clan, and the eyes of his recently deceased student, Obito Uchiha. How can his son have those eyes, and how can this be connected to him, an orphan kid who was raised in an orphanage with facial features that have no resemblance to the Uchiha? He took a deep breath to calm his nerves and thought carefully. He is sure that Tsunade is somewhat right about Naruto, may have inherited it from his family's side. He just needed to check his own lineage, as Naruto can't have inherited it from his mother's family side. Even though Senju and Uchiha are at peace now, there is still some hostility between them. They never had a Senju and a Uchiha marry each other. And everyone knows Tsunade's family tree until the first Hokage, and before that, the two clans couldn't have come together as they were at each other's throats, killing each other since their foundation. Collecting his thoughts, he said, "This is a heavy surprise." Looking at his son's eyes, which were back to their usual sapphire blue. Minato then looked at Tsunade and said seriously, "I will return to the village secretly and look into my family scrolls and see if there is anything that can shed some light on this. Also, we need to keep this a secret. Naruto, being the Senju heir, already put a target on his back. If anyone knows about him having the bloodline of the Senju, Uzumaki, and Uchiha, it would be as if we are asking for our son's death." Tsunade nodded and said, "You don't have to worry about that. I would never tell anybody, not even Sensei. He only knows that I have a son." Minato replied, "Let's keep it that way." He then proceeded to stand up and said, "Well, if you excuse me, I have a mysterious family tree to discover." He joked before disappearing in a yellow flash, leaving the mother and son alone. "You know, Mom, people will eventually know about me and my bloodlines," Naruto said in a calm and quiet tone, surprising his mother. "I know, baby. It will happen someday. But until then, we keep it a secret as long as possible. If people find out when you are old and strong enough, they won't be able to do anything to you," said Tsunade with a sad smile. "Don't worry, Mom. I will become the strongest ninja ever so that you won't be afraid of ever losing me," said Naruto with a confident smile to soften his mother's worries. This made a smile appear on Tsunade's face, who proceeded to hug her son, who slowly fell asleep in his mother's embrace. Time skip. Next morning. The sun is starting to peek over the horizon, signaling a new day. Although it is still very early, we find a very energetic Naruto doing his intense morning training with his mother's supervision. That was followed by intense Kenjutsu training that was interrupted by Minato's return. The three of them proceeded to sit in the living room area around the table. Minato opened by saying, "Well, what I found out is really surprising, but it can explain what's our current situation." "Well, Minato, out with it already," said Tsunade rather impatiently. Anything that is about her son and may affect him makes her very anxious and restless. It turned out that several decades before the formation of Konoha, the Namikaze was just a group of Uchihas who couldn't unlock the Sharingan, so they left the clan and formed the Namikaze. People from other places joined them over time, said Minato, surprising Naruto and Tsunade. But if that is true, then the Uchiha blood should have thinned out so much that nobody can manifest the Sharingan, said Tsunade. "I know that, so I had to dig deeper into my own family. I found out that my grandfather isn't well documented in the scrolls. From what is written, my grandmother described him as a handsome man with raven black eyes and hair, making me believe that he is a Uchiha. I really couldn't find any other sources, as the Namikaze joined Konoha a couple of years before the first Hokage died. My father was already born by then, resembling my grandmother's features, which are blonde hair and blue eyes. So, I think the Uchiha blood stayed dormant, only appearing in Naruto, giving him the black tips in his hair and the Sharingan," said Minato, explaining all that he could find. Tsunade stayed silent for some time before sighing and saying, "Well, that can be our only logical explanation, so let's go with it." She then looked at Minato and said, "Thank you for your time and effort, Minato. I just need another thing. I need you to meet Sensei and bring something that will help in Naruto's training. You can also bring anything you want Naruto to learn." "You are welcome, Tsunade. It was also quite fun and thrilling to find out about my origins," There will be no problem about me going to the village to get what you want. I need to restock on supplies anyway, said Minato, who proceeded to stand up and disappear in a yellow flash. In Konoha, after Minato went to the Hokage and brought what Tsunade wanted, he sealed it in a sealing scroll and went to his own home. He decided to restock on supplies and also decided to give his son Naruto a copy of his two most prized jutsu, the Rasengan, which he invented, and the Flying Thunder God jutsu. The Rasengan is an advanced A-rank sealless shape and chakra manipulation jutsu that he got inspiration from the tailed beast bomb. The jutsu is still unfinished as he couldn't add the chakra nature element to it yet. As for the Flying Thunder God jutsu, it is already Naruto's inheritance from his great-granduncle. Minato just improved it quite a bit. As Minato reached his home, he found it currently empty, which was convenient to him as right now he can tell his girlfriend, Kushina, where he went and where he is going. He is still not ready to tell her that he had a son with her big sister figure. After getting the supplies he needed, he headed to his library to get a copy of the two jutsus. After getting the copies and putting them in the sealing scrolls, he was almost scared to death when a pair of hands wrapped around his lower chest from behind, which caused him to instinctively use his Flying Thunder God jutsu to get away. Kushina Uzumaki was returning to her boyfriend's house from the market after shopping. She was putting her groceries in the kitchen when she saw her boyfriend's usually sealed library open. She quietly reached the library door and looked inside, only to see the back of her boyfriend, Minato, taking some scrolls from the shelves and sealing them in a sealing scroll. She was surprised to see him there as he was scheduled to return in a few weeks. It made her happy that he came earlier, but suddenly her mischievous side kicked in, and she wanted to give him a little scare. She approached him quietly from behind and quickly hugged him from behind to surprise him. But before she could say anything, the two of them proceeded to vanish from the library in a yellow flash. The Fire Capital, Senja Home Garden. The couple suddenly appeared in the middle of the garden, though neither of them knew where they are as Minato instinctively flashed to a place he usually feels safe in. Minato, who still had someone holding him from behind, looked back to see who it was. Seeing the familiar red hair, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "Kushina!" Kushina realized she might have gone a little too far, as she scared Minato to the point he needed to flash away. She looked at Minato a bit awkwardly and embarrassed, and said, "Hee, hey Minato." Minato finally could take a calming breath for his racing heart and turn around, taking Kushina into his chest, hugging her. After calming down a bit, he proceeded to say, "You frightened me almost to death, Kushina. Tone it down, please." Kushina chuckled a bit awkwardly while saying, "Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't think you would be surprised to this degree." She then pulled her head from Minato's and looked to her sides at the unfamiliar surroundings and asked, "By the way, Minato, where did you take us?" Hearing that, Minato around him a bit, while thinking that he must have used the Flying Thunder God jutsu in his fright. His eyes and posture stiffened when he looked behind Kushina. Kushina, feeling his stiffened look and posture, looked behind her only to see her big sister figure Tsunade, sitting on the wooden ledge of the home, holding a cup of tea while having a deadpan look on her face while looking at them. She could even hear Tsunade mutter something about knowing that this day would come. Kushina then had to ask, confused, "Big Sister Tsunade, what are you doing here? What is this place?" Looking around the garden and at the house, Tsunade sighed and said, "This is the Senju home in the Fire Capital. I currently live here." Before Kushina could ask a follow-up question, she heard a child's voice from behind Minato say, "Dad?" Making Minato, who was still hugging her, stiffen up even more and started sweating. She looked behind Minato, only to be surprised by seeing a beautiful, cute child with red hair. The child seems to be about 7 years old, from what she can see. What made her pause a bit was the child's bright, sapphire blue eyes, which she thinks are beautiful. She looked around again, only to find there were no other adult males except the guy currently in her arms. Before she could think even more, she heard the child say, "Dad, who is the pretty big sister with the beautiful red hair that you came with?" making Kushina blush about the compliment, but hearing the child calling Minato dad didn't sit well with her, and she needed to confirm something. She left Minato's embrace, who was still standing stiff and sweating. Kushina then approached the child before bending down slightly to be closer to the child, and then said, "Hello, little buddy. You really mean what you said?" Naruto replied with a smile, "Yeah, you have really beautiful red hair, big sister, just like mine." Kushina smiled sweetly at him and proceeded to hug him while saying, "You are such a cute child. What is your name?" Naruto looked at his mother for confirmation. His stunted mother just gave him a nod while deep in thought. Tsunade now believes that her son is a sweet talker, that with his looks, ladies will always listen to him. She thought Kushina was going to blow up a fuse, but look at her hugging Naruto. Returning to Kushina and Naruto. After receiving confirmation from his mom, he said to Kushina, "Nice to meet you, big sister. My name is Naruto Senju. I am 5 years old. What about you?" Kushina is extremely surprised by that, but keeps a smile on her face and says, "Well, little buddy, I am Kushina Uzumaki. Nice to meet you. Can you tell me who your mom is?" Kushina already knows who his mom is from his name and facial features, but she just needs to make sure. Naruto just pointed to Tsunade and said, "That is my mom." Kushina nodded expecting that, but she then asked the question that she was dreading. "And who is your dad, Naruto?" Naruto just pointed at the still stiff Minato and said, "He is my dad." Hearing that, Kushina became quiet for a little while before saying to Naruto, "Naruto, buddy, can you leave me and your mom and dad alone for a while? We need to talk about something important." She was restraining herself from lashing out at Minato and Tsunade in front of Naruto. Naruto nodded and then went inside the house, leaving his parents with a fuming redhead in the garden. After Naruto left, Kushina's hair started to rise and split into 9 sections, symbolizing how angry and irritated she is. She then turned around to look at a sweating Minato and an awkward Tsunade and said menacingly, "Explain." Tsunade knew that she had promised to explain the situation if Kushina found out, called out to Kushina to come and sit down so she could explain. 2 hours later. "I still can't believe you slept and had a kid with my boyfriend Tsunade," said Kushina. She wasn't angry anymore, but still upset about the whole ordeal. Tsunade has already told her the whole story, making her calm down. "It just happened, Kushina, and it hasn't happened again. I even quit heavy drinking ever since. Also, at that time, he wasn't your boyfriend, as you had already broken up with him at that time. I would have never been able to forgive myself if it had happened while you two were still together," said Tsunade, making Kushina huff in irritation as she knew that was true. But she looked at the bright side. At least Minato didn't sleep with some stranger, and now she has a nephew/little brother who shares her vibrant red hair, even if he has some black tips to spoil. "About Naruto, can I come visit and spend time with him?" Kushina asked Tsunade, making her smile. "Of course, you're more than welcome to visit at any time. You can also teach him Fuinjutsu and how to use chakra chains. He has them like you and grandmother," said Tsunade, surprising Kushina, who nodded enthusiastically, happy to teach Naruto about the Uzumaki heritage. "So how is it like to be pregnant and have your own child?" asked Kushina, wanting to know about Tsunade's experience. Tsunade, with a smile, started to tell Kushina about her life with her baby boy. Minato, beside them, exhaled a sigh of relief that this ordeal ended on a good note. He was sure that if he were the one to explain to Kushina, if he was lucky, he would have to stay in the hospital for days. That is, if Kushina left him alive. He thanked his lucky stars that his girlfriend and the mother of his child are still on good terms and stayed close. He just wants the whole war to end so that he can finally spend time with his son and his girlfriend. Time skip. Around 1 year later, after finding out about the Namikaze's history. It has been about a year since Tsunade and Naruto found out about the Sharingan, and it was also when Kushina found out about Naruto. Ever since then, the life in the Senja home in the Fire Capital became more eventful now that Kushina was in the mix. Kushina now visits Naruto and Tsunade whenever Minato is around. Kushina's and Naruto's relationship is more of a sister and a brother. They like each other's company, and Naruto appreciates Kushina training him in using chakra chains and teaching him Fuinjutsu. Kushina also awakens Naruto's mischievous side, which she regrets very much. She showed him the world of pranks, which he took like a fish in water. Ever since then, both of them have had prank wars in the Senja home, which Kushina loses every single time whenever she visits. Naruto is very smart and tactful, but ever since he started pranking Kushina and sometimes his dad, he has developed a cunning side that Kushina regrets and dreads awakening. He always pranks her, and she can't get back at him. One of these pranks was when Kushina stayed overnight one time, and the next morning, after she entered the bathroom to shower and freshen up, after showering, she was surprised to find her hair dyed bright yellow like Minato's. What happened next was comical, as Kushina was chasing after Naruto, while Tsunade was hunched over, nearly crying from laughter, and Minato was highly amused and trying not to laugh, but failing miserably. Apparently, Naruto put a shampoo bottle mixed with yellow hair dye in the bathroom before Kushina entered. She couldn't catch Naruto as he was very fast for his age, and his use of shadow clones for deception and escape was really annoying to her. Other times, Naruto uses some of the Fuinjutsu he learns in his pranks, making Kushina and Minato paranoid in every step they take. The only one who is safe from Naruto's relentless pranks is his mother, Tsunade, much to the envy of the two victims. Naruto really doesn't like making his mother angry or sad. He really is a mama's boy. As for Naruto's training, the intensity increases in all parts of it, especially his physical training, workouts, and kenjutsu training. He now wears resistance and gravity seals on his limbs and body to make movement harder to stimulate his muscle and bone growth without negative side effects like weights have. He also started training in elemental ninjutsu by achieving better control of his elements and learning jutsus, which he has a huge library full of. Also, regarding his physical and medical training, his mother has started to teach him the basics of her inhuman strength and gave him a book to read and study about human anatomy, plants and poisons, and introductions to medicine and medical fields. People would ask, how can an almost 6-year-old kid can do all that? Well, Naruto is a very smart child who likes to learn, and he also abuses the hell out of shadow clones when he found out that he gets the memories from them. He practically uses them to learn anything and everything fast except physical training and if his mom or dad or Kushina teaches him something. The shadow clones are very useful, but he needs to dispel them with some time between each one so he doesn't hurt himself or his brain. Regarding his bloodlines, he trains as with style following his great-grandfather's notes and trains in using chakra chains with Kushina and from his great-grandmother's notes. As for the Sharingan, you would think he would hit a roadblock in his training because of the unavailability of help from the Uchiha clan. You would be dead wrong. When Naruto was looking through the library, he found scrolls upon scrolls of detailed information about the Uchiha clan Sharingan, Taijutsu, and some of their ninjutsu and jinjutsu written by his great-granduncle. Tobirama really understood the Uchiha clan bloodline and ways due to his fighting them ever since he was a child. He even made an effective jinjutsu to counter the Uchiha clansmen, who were known for their high proficiency in jinjutsu and immunity to it. These notes gave Naruto great insight into his Sharingan and how to effectively use it with all his other parts of training. Naruto continues to learn from these scrolls everything from the taijutsu, ninjutsu, jinjutsu, and kenjutsu of the Uchiha clan. He also learned how to counter the Uchiha style in case he needs to. He would never know when he may need it. Naruto also learned in Tobirama's notes that many Uchiha clansmen fell in battle due to their over-reliance on the Sharingan, which prompted Naruto to see the Sharingan as a tool in his arsenal and not to overly depend on it. Some notes made him more cautious about the Sharingan. His great-granduncle theorized that the Uchiha is a highly emotional clan that awakens their bloodline in highly emotional situations like anger or grief over a loved one, which releases special chakra in their brains, which over time leads to emotional instability with irrational and unpredictable behavior. This made Naruto cautious, but also intrigued if this was true and if it would affect him in the future. Naruto also achieved the two-tomo Sharingan in both his eyes due to him trying to keep up with his father while sparing with him, as his father is a very fast shinobi. This greatly surprised his parents, as they didn't know of any Uchiha clansman who had a two-tomo Sharingan. At nearly 6 years, 3 adults also discovered that Naruto has a high sensitivity to chakra and emotions. This discovery happened when Minato and Kushina came to visit about 6 months ago. Flashback. We find 3 adults and a child sitting at a table, eating lunch and chatting. Naruto cut through the chatting by asking Kushina, "Hey, big sister, can I ask you a question I've been wanting to ask you?" The 3 adults stopped talking and looked at Naruto. Kushina then replied, "What did you want to ask?" "What is this huge amount of chakra in your abdomen? And why do I feel an immense amount of anger and a bit of sadness from it?" asked Naruto. This question surprised and alarmed the adults. Also deep inside the seal on Kushina's abdomen, a huge chained creature opened its eyes, intrigued by the question it heard. This ability to sense chakra and emotion was infamous in Mito Uzumaki's hands. It looks like her great-grandson inherited it. On the outside, the adults were looking at each other silently, processing what Naruto just said. After some awkward silence, Kushina made up her mind and said, "What you feel is the Nine Tails chakra. I am the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails Demon Fox." Kushina closed her eyes and looked away from Naruto after saying that. She feared receiving a look of fear or disgust from who she considered her little, adorable brother. "Wow, so you have the strongest bijou sealed in your body?" said Naruto, feeling excited and intrigued. Hearing that response in that tone made Kushina turn around quickly and look at Naruto in alarm while saying, "What are you excited about? I'm telling you that I am the host of a very dangerous beast." Naruto shrugged, then said, "I always get excited when I learn new things, and, of course, it is a dangerous beast. Anyone imprisoned against their will without doing anything wrong would hold grudges and attack those who imprisoned him." This response confused the 3 adults, while it piqued the sealed Kyuubi's curiosity. Minato asked the question on everyone's mind. "What do you mean, Naruto?" Naruto looked at them as if they were joking and said, "In all the history that I read, it was said that the 9 bijou were there since the dawn of chakra. Never were there any reports of them attacking humanity or being aggressive. People of old said they were peaceful beings. Even some people even worshipped them. So imagine being in the Kyuubi's place. You are sleeping somewhere isolated when suddenly a man comes and controls you with his eyes to fight his rival. And when the fight ends with the victory of the rival and you gain control back of yourself, the rival helps his wife to seal you inside her, saying that you are dangerous even though you weren't in control of your actions. Then the rival goes and captures, which I assume is the Kyuubi's sibling, who had done nothing, and distributes them among the other 4 nations in the name of balance and peace. If I were in Kyuubi's place, I would hate and be angry at those who imprisoned me." Naruto finished with an annoyed huff while crossing his arms in front of his chest. Author note: to those in need context, the man is Madara used his Sharingan to take control of the Kyuubi. The rival is Hashirama, who helped his wife Mito to seal the Kyuubi inside her and also captured all the other remaining bijou. The 3 adults were astonished by Naruto's opinion and knowledge, but couldn't refuse his statement. They knew the history and couldn't say Naruto was wrong. All of them continued to eat in an awkward silence. Meanwhile, inside the seal on Kushina, a booming laugh can be heard. The Kyuubi laughed in amusement and a hint of happiness. It really wanted to talk to the child, but couldn't. It then talked from inside the seal and said, "You really should listen and learn from the kid, Kushina. He is really the brightest and the only decent one of you filthy humans." Its statement was met by silence, as Kushina didn't have a comeback to it. Flashback ended. Tsunade now understood why Naruto seemed to understand the animals he interacted with. He feels their emotions. Naruto used to have some caged birds before opening his chakra. After he unlocked it, he set them free, which confused her at the time. About a week ago, they celebrated both the end of the Third Shinobi War and Naruto's 6th birthday. The end of the war left a bittersweet feeling in everybody, especially Minato. He is happy the war ended, but he lost two of his students, while the third was very affected by it. This birthday for Naruto was the biggest until now. He celebrated it with his mother and father and his big sister. He was showered with different gifts from them, like more Fuinjutsu scrolls and snacks from Kushina and sets of ninja tools from his father. But what stood out was his mother's gift. Since he showed peak interest and dedication to learning Kinjutsu, his mother contacted an old legendary blacksmith who used to provide his services to the Senju. On Naruto's 6th birthday, he was gifted a beautiful katana that she had ordered more than a year ago. The katana is a beauty and a deadly blade, about 41 inches long. It has a black and gold guard and a black handle wrapped in a white cloth in a diamond pattern. The blade is protected by a quality black sheath. The blade is a masterpiece made of chakra metal as purely as possible, which is why it took so much time to make. The katana also took a lot of money to be made, as chakra metal isn't a cheap material by a long shot. Tsunade didn't care how expensive it was. She wanted the best for her son to protect himself. This katana was the old but legendary blacksmith's finest work, which he named the Yamato. Author note: to be clear, the katana is an inspiration from Virgil's Katana Yamato from DMC. The katana in this story just has the name and the looks of its original counterpart in DMC. It is a very sharp and extreme quality chakra metal katana, without the demonic power or the ability to cut in space to open portals. P.S. I own nothing in the DMC series. Naruto really loved the katana, but unfortunately it was currently too big for him to wield, so he would train with wood and cheap metal ones until he felt he was worthy of such a beautiful katana. Now, in the current time, it has been 8 days since Naruto's 6th birthday. We see Naruto returning from the forest near his home after a few hours of training and appreciating nature. As he neared his house, he suddenly stopped as he felt two chakra signatures in the bathhouse connected to his home. One was very familiar to him, which was his mother, who seemed to soak in the hot spring inside the bathhouse. The other chakra signature, which was just on the outside wall, was completely foreign to him. The chakra signature was slightly larger than his mother's, but the feeling it gave him was irritating him. It gave him the same feeling, even stronger, as the weird looks that he met in the market gave his mother, even though she was in disguise. His mom told him that these are some of the worst types of men, called perverts, and women aren't safe around them. She also told him to never talk or interact with any of them, as they are a disturbing influence. Naruto felt his blood boil in anger, thinking that one of those bad men might harm his mom. He sneaked around so he could be hidden behind the perverted intruder. As he continued his extremely silent approach, which he acquired from sneaking on Kushina and pranking her through the trees and bushes, he reached the clearing where the outer wall of the bathhouse was. On top of the wall, he saw a man slightly taller and bigger than his father. He was wearing red clothing, and his head was full of long, spiky white hair. The man was looking inside the bathhouse and giggling weirdly, which infuriated Naruto. Naruto knew he needed to protect his mom and beat this man to death. He thought of how to proceed, knowing that if the man used his chakra, he would be in trouble. Suddenly, a sinister smile appeared on Naruto's face as he got an idea. Silently, one chakra chain appeared behind Naruto and moved at neck-breaking speed towards the unsuspecting man. Naruto is going to have a helpless test dummy for his enchanted punches that he learned from his mother. Jiraiya of the Three Sannin and Tsunade's teammate. He's been searching for Tsunade ever since the war ended. He couldn't stop getting curious about why Tsunade only sent shadow clones to the Wind Country front. He searched for her all over the Land of Fire, in almost every inn, traven, and casino, but nobody had seen her. Even his sensei didn't give him her location, only telling him that she is busy. He was about to give up when he remembered he hadn't checked the Senja home in the fire capital, which he had visited only once when he was young, when he was on a C-rank mission to the fire capital. After he reached the Senju home in the fire capital, he was about to knock when he heard a faint, familiar feminine voice humming from a part of the house he remembered to be an indoor hot spring. Quickly, a nasty, perverted grin appeared on his face as he was pretty sure that it was Tsunade in there, and he now had a chance to peek at her before he met her. He quickly and stealthily went to the outer wall of the hot spring and climbed up, only peeking with his head to look inside. The atmosphere inside was very foggy, which annoyed him as he couldn't see a thing, but slowly the fog began to dissipate, showing a still unclear figure of a woman sitting in the hot spring. Jiraiya giggled perversely as he thought that he was going to see her naked. He returned to look more closely and concentrated his vision inside the bath, when suddenly something wrapped around his body very tightly, before pulling him roughly from the wall and slamming his back violently against a tree. Jiraiya wanted to use replacement jutsu, but to his alarm and horror, he couldn't feel or use his chakra. Now that his back was against a tree, he tried to see what his situation was like. He could feel that all his body couldn't move except his head and feet. Looking at the familiar bright golden chains that were binding him, he now knew why he couldn't feel his chakra, which was also a sign that it was Kushina who made him pale. But looking in front of him, he relaxed but was also confused to see that the chain's user wasn't Kushina, but a red-headed kid who looked about 8 to 9 years old, who was approaching him with a smile that made a chill crawl up his spine. Watching the kid approach him while cracking his fingers and fists made him scoff as if the kid could hurt him. As the kid reached him, he heard the scoff, and, as if he read Jiraiya's mind, he threw a punch that missed Jiraiya's head by a couple of centimeters, landing on the tree with a huge boom. Jiraiya's back hairs stood up in fright as he turned slowly to look at what was left of the 1 to 1.5 meters in diameter tree trunk as the tree slowly fell behind him with a huge thud. Jiraiya gulped loudly as he turned to the kid who was still giving him that frightening, small smile. This kid, who Jiraiya doesn't know his name, knows Tsunade's monstrous strength technique, even though not at her level. What the kid showed could seriously injure even the toughest of shinobi, especially if they are in his helpless position. Jiraiya tried to make himself look as pitiful as possible and muttered, "Mercy." The kid's smile increased, making it seem that the Shinigami's figure was behind him. Jiraiya heard the kid speak for the first time and say in a sickening sweet tone, "Sorry, all out of mercy." Naruto's fists lunged at Jiraiya's helpless body. What could be heard now from the forest clearing is screams and the sounds of bones popping and breaking down a little while earlier. After seeing her son going out to do his morning training routine, Tsunade spent some time cleaning the house and going to the market to refill any needed home necessities. What followed, that was a desire from her to spend some quality, alone and quiet time, soaking in the indoor hot spring. She really likes the Senja home in the fire capital more than the Senju clan home compound in Konoha, even though it is a whole lot smaller. The compound may have a lot more room and private baths, but nothing beats an indoor private hot spring. Also, the large compound feels hollow and empty due to the lack of any more Senju clan members. Most of them either died in the Shinobi Wars or were hunted down. And her granduncle's policy of marrying Senju clan members into civilian families to try and protect them was really a bad idea and backfired spectacularly. It thinned the Senju bloodline to the point where the generations that came from that were almost all full of civilian characteristics, dooming the clan to near extinction, leaving only her and her son. After getting ready and showering, she entered the hot spring and sat down in it, releasing a satisfied sigh as she leaned her back against the edge of the hot spring. Relaxing in the hot water, Tsunade started to look back at how her life was before she had her son. Thinking back, she realized she was a mess of a woman. Ever since the end of the Second Shinobi War and losing her little brother Nawaki and her lover Dan, she was lost and extremely depressed. She had left the village to clear her mind. While traveling, Her habits of drinking and gambling became her main methods of trying to cope with her loss and forget her sadness. It didn't work. But ever since she got pregnant and had her baby boy, her life hasn't been any better. Her son Naruto is the best thing that has ever happened to her. He is a blessing and a ray of light that shines in her once dark life. Her terrible memories of losing her grandparents, parents, brother, and lover were put in the back of her mind, being replaced by wonderful memories of her little Naru. His birth, first words, first steps, first birthday, and many other fond memories with many to come will always be treasured in her memory and heart until the day she dies. Her thoughts were broken when she heard a loud bang and a noisy, creaking noise of a falling tree ending with a thud, which shook the ground and rippled the water a little, coming from directly outside the bathhouse. She stood in alarm, and before she could go and put her clothes on, she heard a scream followed by sounds of a beating and bones breaking. She rushed to put her clothes on and went outside. What she saw stunned her and calmed her a little. Returning to the present. The scene in front of Tsunade is really comical to her. She is watching her almost 4 feet, 6 years old son's fists sink into Jiraiya's chest, getting a scream of pain out of him. She can recognize her teammate anywhere, as he is the only one she knows who wears that red outfit and has that long and spiky white hair. She watches as Jiraiya shouts, not the face, only to get punched in the face anyway. She also winced and shivered slightly, watching Naruto stomp on Jiraiya's crouch area with that terrifying smile on his face, making Jiraiya let out a high-pitched scream. Her son may have a sadistic side to him after all. Tsunade wanted to know what made Naruto beat up Jiraiya, even though she had a feeling about the cause. She called out, "Naruto." The beating stopped, and 2 sets of eyes looked at her with different emotions. Naruto looked at her with happiness and pride in what he was doing, while Jiraiya's banged-up face looked at her with so much gratitude, as if she were his savior. Naruto turned around and started walking to his mother while dragging Jiraiya with his chains. As he reached his mom, he smiled and said, "Hey, Mom." Let's just say this response almost shattered Jiraiya's mind as he lay there chained up, looking astonished between the two, trying to believe what he heard and saw. "Honey, why are you beating up Jiraiya?" said Tsunade, which got her a surprised look from her son. "You know this weird guy, Mom?" said Naruto as he pointed at the chained-up Jiraiya, to which Tsunade nodded. "Yes, he is one of my teammates. His name is Jiraiya," said Tsunade, making Naruto remember something. "Is he the perverted teammate you told me about?" questioned Naruto. "What made you remember him by that description, Naruto?" asked Tsunade as she started to smile as her feelings were confirmed. This smile to Naruto seemed like his mother's usual beautiful smile, but to Jiraiya, it meant there was another beating coming, causing him to go extremely pale. "Well, Mom, while I was coming back from my training, I felt someone I didn't know looking at you from the outside wall of the hot spring and giggling weirdly. So, I sneaked behind him and chained him up with my chakra chain and proceeded to beat him up," said Naruto, looking proud of himself. "You did well, Naru. How about you leave me to talk to my teammate while you wash yourself in the sweat of training?" said Tsunade, while her smile widened as she cracked her fingers, making Jiraiya's heart almost stop. "Okay, Mom, I will leave you two to talk. I don't think he can walk, as I cracked most of his bones, I think," said Naruto, as he pulled his chakra chain back into his body and then walked into the house. "That won't be a problem, baby," said Tsunade as she approached the now free but unable to move Jiraiya, who gulped loudly in dread. As Naruto disappeared into the house, loud bangs and pain-filled screams could be heard from the garden. 1 hour later, a pair of mother and a freshly showered son were sitting on the dining table, sipping hot green tea. On the other side of the table sat Jiraiya, who was wrapped from head to toe in bandages, looking like a mummy. "Why did you heal him, Mom?" asked Naruto. "I would love to leave him banged up, baby, but we need to talk, and he can't stay injured for long as Konoha needs him," said Tsunade with a huff, making Naruto nod in understanding. Tsunade then looked at Jiraiya, who was busy looking between her and her son, trying to wrap his head around the fact that she now has a child. She then asked, Why are you here, Jiraiya? I just want to know how you are doing and why you are only sending clones to the Wind Country front, inquired Jiraiya, while looking at her for answers. Well, as you see, I am busy raising my son, and Sensei, knowing that, only asked me to heal and counter Chiyo's poisons, so I only sent reinforced shadow clones regularly in my place, as they weren't going to do any fighting, said Tsunade. Jiraiya processed what he had heard. He felt that what happened was for the best. So, who is his father? Said Jiraiya in a perverted tone with a hidden bitterness in it while looking between the mother and son pair. Although he stopped pursuing a relationship with Tsunade, it still hurt that his longtime crush had a child with someone else. It is none of your business for now, and you should introduce yourself to my son, as his first impression of you is terrible, said Tsunade, trying to dodge Jiraiya's question. It wouldn't look nice to tell him she had her son with his student due to them being drunk. Jiraiya blinked before smiling widely. He jumped out of his chair onto the clearing in the middle of the room and summoned an armored orange toad that was big enough for him to stand on and process to say, "From east to west, I am the mighty toad sage, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Nice to meet you," while doing a weird dance on the back of the toad, looking at Naruto. Naruto looked at the weird dance happening in front of him with a deadpan look on his face, with a little sweat drop, while his mom shook her head while covering her face with the palm of her hand in embarrassment. "My name is Naruto Senju, and I am 6 years old. Nice to meet you, too, Ero Sennin," said Naruto with a little mischievous smile, making Jiraiya fall off his toad from the embarrassment and suddenness of the nickname, making the toad disappear. Tsunade, beside Naruto, laughed so hard at the nickname as it described Jiraiya perfectly. This is how Naruto meets one of his mother's teammates for the first time. The remainder of Jiraiya's visit was just catching up with Tsunade and learning more about Naruto. About 2 years later, on October 10th. About 2 years have passed. Naruto's 8th birthday came and went 3 days ago. This birthday was the biggest celebration to date, as all the people that Naruto knew came to celebrate with him. Minato and a heavily pregnant Kushina were there, followed by Jiraiya, who was informed on that day that Naruto was Minato's son. When Jiraiya was told the whole story of how Naruto came to be, firstly, he was surprised, which was followed by a great feeling of pride, and a sense of bitterness disappeared knowing that his prized student is the father of Tsunade's child. Another guest was the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. It was a surprise for everyone to see him there, especially for Naruto, as he hadn't seen his grandpa Suru in about 6 years. That was the best birthday for Naruto, as he got to celebrate it with all the people he knew and loved. He was showered that day with many different gifts from everyone. Looking back at the 2 years that passed, many things have happened. Firstly, Naruto's level of training increased day after day. His chakra levels now are at high Jonin, approaching elite Jonin levels with low Jonin level control. All his skills are at the Chunin level, with some in the elite Chunin level. Beginning with Taijutsu, his body is growing at an amazing rate. His height is reaching 5 feet, even though he isn't 10 years old yet, which indicates that he will grow taller than his mother and father. His muscles and bone structure are growing nicely and incredibly strong due to the resistance and gravity seals. While he learns his mom's monstrous strength and his father's hummingbird style, his clones are gaining muscle memory of the Senju and Uchiha clan style from the notes in the library. For ninjutsu, he leaves most of it to his clones. They do chakra nature's exercises that he learns from the library. They also practice a lot of different ninjutsu, which the library is full of, and put the effort to master these jutsu and decrease the hand signs required. The same goes for jinjutsu. The clones learn the different Senju and Uchiha-style jinjutsu, which he is slowly becoming quite scary efficient with, by the word of his father, who Naruto spars with him a lot. As for Kenjutsu, he practices every day diligently using his great-granduncle's notes as a reference on the Senju and Uchiha style. He also thinks of ways to invent new moves, and also looks forward to mixing his Kenjutsu with the Flying Thunder God when he learns it. Now, for medical ninjutsu and medicine overall, having the best doctor and medical ninja as your mother and mentor really pushes one's level to higher degrees quite quickly. Naruto's base knowledge is solid. He practices what he learns on injured animals that he finds under his mother's watch. All he needs now is to keep increasing his medical knowledge and practice on sick patients, which would be feasible when he goes to Konoha. But what Naruto excels in is Fuinjutsu. The Uzumaki blood is truly strong in this one. Naruto is on his way to becoming an intermediate Fuinjutsu expert on the Uzumaki scale. To those who don't know, Uzumaki's scale of Fuinjutsu mastery includes beginner or novice, then intermediate, then master, then grandmaster mastery. To anyone outside the Uzumaki clan, intermediate Uzumaki mastery is considered a master in Fuinjutsu arts. The now near-extinct Uzumaki's Fuinjutsu arts are very coveted by all the elemental nations. For of the great nations banded together to take them out and take their techniques, only to return empty-handed while losing about half of their invading forces. The only thing that they achieved was the near annihilation of the Uzumakis. There were only two known grandmasters of Fuinjutsu known in recent decades, who were Mito Uzumaki, the first Hokage's wife, and Ashina Uzumaki, the last Uzumaki clan head before their destruction, who even Hashirama feared his Fuinjutsu powers. As for the masters, Tobirama Senju was a master of Fuinjutsu. Currently, the most powerful Fuinjutsu users are Minato Namikaze, who is a middle master level, and Kushina Uzumaki, who is a peak master level. Kushina tried to enter the Grandmaster stage, but all learning material was said to be lost as it was safely kept by the Uzumaki clan. Notably, Jiraiya is at an intermediate level, seen as a master by normal people's view. Returning to Naruto, he also studies other subjects like academic skills, math, politics, and law. But he leaves those to one or two clones as he keeps himself busy by training his body or learning from his parents or Kushina. Lastly, about his bloodlines, he practices the wood style and chakra chains alone or under the supervision of his mom. As for the Sharingan, he trains with it, using it to enforce his mastery of the Uchiha style of Taijutsu, Jinjutsu, and Kenjutsu. He is also working on how to use it in medical jutsu and Fuinjutsu. As for other things that happened in those 2 years, there were some notable things like his father becoming the 4th Hokage, which surprised all of them. Also, his father married his big sister, Kushina. This felt wrong to write. This came as a surprise to Naruto, but he accepted it quickly. After that, by some time, he got the news that Kushina is pregnant and he will soon be a big brother, which made him extremely happy and excited. Now, in front of the garden under the light from a lamp and the moon, we see Naruto and a bunch of his clones studying and learning Fuinjutsu material. Kushina gave him a copy of all the material that he will need to reach peak master level in Fuinjutsu. Naruto is excited as Kushina is due to give birth any day now. He looks forward to being a big brother to his baby sister, which he felt from the baby's chakra signature, but kept to himself, not telling anyone not to spoil the surprise. Things look to be going well for Naruto. He has a lot of teachers helping him to get stronger, a wholesome, warm family he loves very much, and a sibling on the way. Everything is looking to be going on perfectly well for the upcoming young shinobi, earlier on the 10th of October. A heavily pregnant Kushina Uzumaki is seen walking in the middle of the village, being led to a secretive place by the 3rd Hokage's wife, Biwako Sarutobi. Kushina is due to give birth any time now, which is a huge deal as she is the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. A female Jinchuriki is most vulnerable during childbirth, which is a major risk as her chakra is in a chaotic state, trying to help her push the newborn out and decrease the pain, leaving nothing to help the seal push back the sealed bijou. The seal will need outside help to keep the Kyuubi locked, so Minato and Hiruzen planned to take Kushina to a secure place where Minato would help the midwives in the childbirth process by keeping the seal intact. As Kushina was walking with Biwako, she spotted her friend Mikoto Uchiha, the wife of the Uchiha clan head, Fugaku Uchiha. Mikoto who is caring for her second-born child, had been a close friend to Kushina from their academy days. As they neared each other, Kushina said, "Hey Makoto, how are you?" "I'm fine, Kushina, how are you?" said Makoto, smiling slightly. "I'm as fine as it can be considering this," said Kushina, smiling as she rubbed her big belly, making Makoto chuckle slightly. "And who is the cute little girl?" said Kushina, looking at the baby in Makoto's arms. "It is a boy, Kushina. His name is Sasuke, and he is a couple of days old," said Makoto, chuckling a little. Kushina chuckled in an embarrassed manner before saying, "I am sorry. He looks completely like you. I thought he was a girl," making Makoto's smile widen. If her second child looks like her husband again, she would be a bit disappointed. "Maybe when both of our children are old enough, they will be close friends like us," said Kushina with a smile that was reflected on Makoto's face, as she liked the sound of that. "Do you know if your baby is a boy or a girl?" asked Makoto, intrigued. "Minato and I wanted it to be a surprise, so we don't know. But both of us will be happy with either one," said Kushina with a bright smile. "Let's go, Kushina, or we will be late," said Biwako as she started to pull Kushina away. "Did it hurt, Makoto?" asked Kushina as she was pulled away. Makoto stayed silent with an awkward smile on her face as she saw the two women walk away. After they left, Makoto shook her head before turning around to go home. She really couldn't tell a woman who is going to be a first-time mother that the pain of childbirth is the worst pain she has ever felt. As the evening fell, inside a hidden location covered in seals, we hear the screams of Kushina as she was about to give birth. Around her, the midwives are tending to her needs while Biwako is helping in her delivery, and Minato is beside her, concentrating on the seal to keep it intact and prevent the QB from escaping. After some time, a newborn's cry can be heard as Biwako carried it to a corner to wash before wrapping it in a blanket and walking towards the parents with a smile while saying, "Congratulations, both of you. It is a healthy baby girl." As she walked to Kushina, Minato tried to carry his newborn daughter, only for Biwako to prevent him by saying, "The baby's mother carries her first." On the bed, a tired but happy Kushina took her baby from Biwako and looked at her asleep newborn with Minato looking from over her shoulder. Her baby is a cute little baby with fair white skin and a head nearly full of blonde hair. She smiled at her child before rubbing the tip of her finger on her daughter's chubby cheek, making the sleeping baby wake up and giggle. The baby looked at her parents with violet blue eyes like her mom's, making Kushina smile warmly and happily before saying, "She is perfect, Minato. A perfect mix of us." Minato had a goofy, happy smile before saying, "Yeah, our perfect baby girl." He then asked, "What do we name her?" "How about Mito, after Grandma Mito," said Kushina. Mito as in Mito Uzumaki, the wife of Hashirama and the grandmother figure to Kushina ever since she came to Konoha. "That sounds perfect, honey. Our daughter Mito Uzumaki Namikaze," said Minato, agreeing with a big sunny smile. The happy atmosphere was broken by the sound of fighting and metal clashing coming from outside, which stopped as quickly as it started, making the people inside the hideout tense up. Minato kept his eyes glued to the entrance for any intruders while standing next to his wife. His alertness was broken by a scream coming from behind him, making him turn around only to see an intruder wearing a weird face mask with one eye hole carrying his newborn daughter with a kunai to her throat after killing all the midwives, including Biwako, who had taken his daughter from Kushina to put her in a nearby crib and feed her to give the new mother a chance to sleep. "Step away from the Jinchuriki Yondaime," said the intruder, whose deep voice Minato assumed that he is a man. "Okay, calm down. What do you want?" said an anxious Minato as his mind kept trying to think. How did this man get here without him noticing? And what happened to the ANBU that stood guard? How did he know about this place? This place and the due date of Kushina were kept a secret. "I am calm, Yondaime, and I already told you what I want," said the masked man as he neared the kunai to the now awake and crying baby's throat. The standoff really ticked the masked man off as he proceeded to throw the baby into the air, making Minato dash and catch his baby, only to find the blanket surrounding the baby was covered in already lit explosive tags. Minato, knowing he needed to flash away, got a glimpse of the masked man disappearing with Kushina into a strange vortex originating from the masked man's eyehole. Minato flashed away to a forest clearing, quickly discarding his baby's explosive tags-filled blanket before flashing away again to get away from the explosion into his own house's main bedroom. Minato laid his now asleep baby daughter on a bed before kissing her forehead lovingly, then saying, "I'm going to save your mom, Mito. Stay safe and strong for me. Okay?" He then proceeded to flash away. A few seconds earlier, we find Kushina's hands chained up, making her stand up. The masked man stood across her before saying, "Now come, Kyuubi." A Sharingan appeared for the mask eyehole, enabling the man to enter the seal space and put the Kyuubi under his control. The weakened seal offered no resistance as the Kyuubi poured out of the seal into the outside world. "Good. Now come, Kyuubi, we have a village to destroy," said the masked man in a pleased tone. "Wait, stop," said a weak Kushina who was on her hands and knees as she was set free from the chains. Remarkable. The Uzumaki clan's vitality is truly impressive. Any other person would drop dead after extracting any other bijou from inside them, let alone the Kyuubi, said the masked man in a fascinated tone before controlling the Kyuubi to attack the helpless Kushina. Before the Kyuubi's front limbs struck Kushina, Minato appeared and quickly carried Kushina in his hands, and their bodies flickered onto the top of a tree a bit farther away. Minato looked at the direction of the masked man and the Kyuubi with a chilling look before flashing away to his home. After reaching the main bedroom, he laid Kushina next to the sleeping baby. "Mito," said Kushina in a weakened and slightly sad tone while rubbing her head against her sleeping daughter as she took her baby into her embrace. Minato looked at the scene in front of him with a grim and sad look on his face. He then reached into his closet and pulled out his Hokage coat before putting it on. "I will return soon," said Minato as he got ready. "Please take care, Minato," said Kushina. Minato gave her a small smile before flashing away. Moments earlier, the masked man released the Kyuubi in the middle of Konoha, causing destruction and casualties from the defending shinobi in each strike. Minato appeared on his carved face on the Hokage monument as the Kyuubi is forming a Bijidama, which it released towards Minato's direction. Minato quickly held a flying thunder god kunai before weaving a set of hand seals in quick succession, muttering, "Jakuken Kekiai, space-time barrier." A stream of sealing spread out with the kunai, Minato holding in the center, opening a rift in space that stopped the approaching menacing Bijidama before slowly absorbing it and teleporting it away from the village to explode safely. Far away from Konoha, a huge explosion erupted, illuminating the night sky to the point it seemed like the sun was rising. Minato, after clearing the Bijidama, looked at the bijou in the middle of the village only to see the third Hokage using his personal summon Enma, who transformed into his adamantine staff state, to push the Kyuubi outside the village. Seeing this, Minato felt that Hiruzen, with the help of the shinobi, would manage to deal with the Kyuubi long enough for him to find and deal with the masked man. A couple of minutes later, the situation is looking grim for the third Hokage and the shinobi assisting him. Their casualty numbers are rising at a frightening speed, with any damage they do to the Kyuubi is healed instantly. Suddenly, a giant toad, slightly smaller than half the size of the Kyuubi, fell from the sky onto the now raging but control-free bijou, pinning it down. "It's the personal summon of Yondaime-sama, Gamabunta," yelled a shinobi. "Look, Yondaime-sama is on top of his summon. Now, can defeat this monster," said another shinobi while pointing at Gamabunta's head. Minato on Gamabunta's head was deep in thought. He had defeated the masked man, dealt some damage to the man, and severed the control he had on the Kyuubi. Minato sealed the masked man's ability to summon and control the Kyuubi, making him flee with grave wounds from the Rasengan. What really was a head-scratcher for Minato was the weird space-time the masked man used, which he figured out a bit, only enough to land a devastating blow, and what the masked man identified himself with. He called himself Madara Uchiha, which should be impossible, as it was recorded that he died, killed by Hashiroma's hands in the Valley of the End. And if by some miracle he was still alive, he would be so old he wouldn't be able to walk. But these thoughts should wait for another time, as there is a rampaging Bijou under him and his summon. He quickly teleported himself and the two giant creatures away from the village, causing him to pant in fatigue from the effort. Minato, you need to think of something quick. I can't hold this beast for long, said Gamabunta with some difficulty as he is trying to keep the Kyuubi down. Get off me, you filthy toad, roared an enraged Kyuubi. Hold him for a bit more, Bunta. I will be back quickly, said Minato as he flashed away. Minato returned with his wife and daughter. Kushina, can you use your chakra chains and put a barrier around us? Asked Minato as he panted from exhaustion. Kushina nodded and did what was asked of her, but with great difficulty. Now that the Kyuubi couldn't move, Gamabunta looked at Minato and said, That's all I can do, Minato. Good luck, boy, before disappearing in a giant puff of smoke. Kushina, can we seal the Kyuubi back into you? Asked Minato. Kushina shakes her head weakly before saying, while panting in exhaustion, We can't do that. The seal on my body was forced open, damaging it beyond repair. Even if we made a new one, I wouldn't be able to hold the Kyuubi as I am out of chakra, and I'm burning life force, keeping the barrier and chains up. Minato thought a bit before summoning a sealing altar and putting baby Mito. I'm going to seal the Kyuubi in our daughter, said Minato. Is there no other way, Minato? Said Kushina with desperation. I am afraid there aren't other options, Kushina, said Minato with sadness. But, Minato, I don't think Mito will be able to hold the Kyuubi, said Kushina. Minato thought a bit before getting an idea. He looked at Kushina and said, I will be back in a second, before flashing away. At the Senju home in the Fire Capital, Naruto was busy studying with his clone when he saw his father appear beside him. He was about to greet him when he saw his roughed-up attire and felt his depleting chakra reserves. Naruto, where is Tsunade? Asked Minato, panting a bit. She left after my birthday and went to heal an acquaintance that she knows and owed a favor to in the land of tea, who begged for her help. She should be back in a few days. More important than that, are you okay, Dad? Did something happen? Asked a worried Naruto. Minato sighed in sadness as he wanted to at least give a chance for Kushina to survive, but he couldn't reach Tsunade. He proceeded to put his hand on his son's shoulder. In the forest clearing near the altar, Naruto looked around trying to figure out where his dad had taken him, only for his head to look behind him, only to see the towering, struggling form of the Kyuubi wrapped with chakra chains coming from his big sister, whom he felt an alarming and deadly low amount of chakra coming from her. He dashed towards her before kneeling beside her and using the mythical palm on her, tried to heal her. He fired question after question in an alarmed tone. Big sister Kushina, what happened? Why is the Kyuubi outside your seal? Why is your chakra depleted? And why is your chakra network in a mess? Where's my baby sister? And please stop using chakra. You don't have any left. You are using your life force, screaming the last bit as tears started flowing from his eyes. Kushina gave him a sad smile before saying, Your sister is fine. She is beside me in the altar. You should stop now, Nero. It is no use. It's too late for me. As he pushed his hands gently away from her before saying, There isn't much time to explain. The dad will tell you what needs to be done. Naruto, there isn't much time to explain. All I can tell you is that a man attacked us while Kushina was giving birth and unleashed the Kyuubi. We need to seal the Kyuubi again, but this time inside you, said Minato, as Naruto's tearful face looked at him. Can we just let the Kyuubi go? It's suffered enough, said Naruto, surprised at adults, and making the QB stop struggling from shock. That really isn't an option, Naruto, as the other nations will go to war with us to destroy us and capture it, said Minato. Can't we seal it back inside, big sister? Won't that help her condition? Asked Naruto. It's too late for me, Naru. Any new seal on me won't hold, said Kushina, giving Naruto a tired, sad smile. Naruto stood up and walked to the QB, much to the adult's alarm. They called him to return, but he did not reply. He reached the right in front of the bijou before looking into its large eyes and saying, I am sorry this had to happen again to you. I promise you I will never mistreat you and treat you with respect. And I also promise to find a way to give you and your siblings the freedom to be able to do what you want.